We're Group 9 presenting Case 1. We will first introduce the case, moving on to the assessment results and intervention analysis. Lastly, further clinical recommendation. Cici is an 8 years and 2 months old girl studying in a mainstream primary school who only use simple sentences and Cantonese as dominant language. Let's start with the assessment plan. First, we will assess her receptive language ability, as it is crucial to daily participation and responses. Moreover, it precedes expressive language development. As Cici only uses simple sentences, it is necessary to see whether her expressive language difficulty stems from her language comprehension. Command comprehension will be assessed using CLT testing commands with several information-carrying words and steps, while question comprehension will be assessed with reference to Blank's model. Lastly, the Hong Kong Cantonese Oral Language Assessment Scale subtest 语法理解 to assess her comprehension of syntax. Our next objective will be assessing her expressive language ability. The complexity of expressive syntax affects her academic performance and social interaction. Narrative also plays an important role in classroom discourse. As Cici can only say simple sentences, it is crucial to prioritize examining Cici's breakdown levels in her expressive language. Expressive vocabulary will be assessed with Hong Kong COLAS subtest 詞語釋義 and 詞義關係. Expressive syntax will be assessed with COLAS subtest 看圖造句 and CLT. Synthetic analysis of a language sample and narrative tasks will also be conducted. Next, narrative skills will be assessed with a forecast story, in which the microstructure will be analyzed with reference to the Applebee's narrative stages, and the microstructure will be scored with a protocol. Her school writing assignment will also be screened to evaluate her expository skills.
我哋要用首先，然後最後嚟形容下呢3幅圖畫。姑娘示範下先。首先擠牙膏，然後刷牙，最後啷口。你試下講一次啊！首先擠牙膏，然後刷牙，最後啷口。好俾心機喎，就係咁啦。咁今次思思自己試下喎，要用首先，然後最後嚟講呢3幅圖畫。
So let's analyze the results. Firstly, for receptive language, Cici has fair comprehension across different areas, including commands, questions, and different syntaxes. Throughout the assessment, Cici was able to communicate with the semantic breakdown. Therefore, we concluded that there was no noted deficits in Cici's receptive communication. For expressive language, in HK COLAS, 詞語釋義 and 詞義關係 subtest results suggested Cici's fair ability in word definition and semantic mapping. But then her score in the subtest 語法表達 fell into 1 2/3 standard deviation below the mean of the H-note. It has indicated a moderate deficit in her expressive syntax. During the assessment, Cici was able to provide semantic information based on the scenarios, but was not able to link ideas with the complex syntactic types. The above performance was consistent with the Quantian reference test. In compound sentences, she was able to provide relevant context, but exhibited difficulty in linking ideas with the conjunctions. When in a conversation, the language sample indicated that Cici was able to use conjunctions very seldomly. Moreover, she was able to use cohesive ties to link temporal events. However, simple sentences were dominant in the sample. There were very limited, if not none, observations of complex and compound sentences. The utterance on the slides are examples where the omission of relative clauses and conjunctions can affect the listener's ease of comprehension. As for narrative skills, Cici was able to include a clear theme and plot of a story. 5 story grammar elements were identified where events were sequenced logically and temporally, suggesting an Applebee's true narrative stage and therefore good macrostructure. In terms of microstructure, while Tier 2 vocabularies and cohesive devices were identified, sentences remain very simple, further showing that Cici has good content and cohesion, but has difficulty in syntactic complexity. Moreover, it's suggested by Cici's performance in school written text that her weakness in syntax has imposed impacts on her ability to explain academic ideas with different expository skills, such as explaining cause-effect relationship and problem-solving relationship. Finally, Cici is diagnosed with developmental language disorder with a communication breakdown level on expressive syntax, while the prognosis is fair, suggested by good comprehension and compliance.
Let's move on to the intervention. Here's the long-term goal and short-term goal. Syntax intervention is targeted to support Cici's social development, as her peers may perceive those using overly simplified speech as less fun to engage with, and reliance on simpler language structures often leads to social withdrawal. Second, in terms of academic development, relying only on simple sentences can lead to long-term difficulties in meeting academic demands, preventing school-age children from managing the high linguistic and attentional demands required in class. In terms of developmental appropriacy, the selected goal should be recalled by Cici during the preschool period. Functionally, the use of 因為所以 is essential for academic writing, reasoning about daily events, and explaining events or motivations in narrative tasks. Lastly, the use of target structure falls within CC's zone of personal development, with 33.3% of accuracy in CRT. It would be highly prioritized for intervention. Here's the intervention plan proposed. Sentence combining approach will be adopted. Research shows it is evidence-based for complex syntax acquisition. It transforms basic clauses into more complex syntactic structures in both oral and written language. It also reduces the cognitive burden of generating original content, putting focus on sophisticated language structures. For internal evidence, CC could produce simple sentences with young Y to express a causal relationship, but she could not link the antecedent and consequence together using the full young Y solid structure. Therefore, Session 1 will target production of young Y solid with verbal and visual cues, and CC occasionally used conjunctions, but incompletely.
Here is the treatment procedure for Session 1. A visual map with the words for conjunction will be presented. Then the clinician will ask CC to read out 因為所以 on the visual cue cards to check her understanding on the visual cue. 你睇下呢因為呢個係所以，你試下讀一次啊！呢個係因為，呢個係所以。The clinician will introduce what is a causal relationship and the meaning of the conjunctions to ensure her understanding of the functions. 咁因為所以咧係用嚟做咩嘅咧？原來咧就係形容兩件事件之間嘅因果關係啦。乜嘢係因果關係啊？即係一件事件嘅出現或者發生咧，會導致到之後嘅另一件事件出現或者發生喎。Picture cards will be presented to CC in pairs with one antecedent and one consequence by placing them on the visual map. 咁我哋睇下呢度啦。哇！呢度咧哥哥好凍啊！咁點咧？原來咧佢就導致到咧之後哥哥咧去着外套啦。咁發生先嘅事件咧，我哋會叫佢做原因啦。發生後嗰個事件咧，我哋就會話佢係一個結果嚟嘅。After that, the clinician will demonstrate how to use 因為所以 to form sentences that describe causal relationship. Moving on to the treatment trials, CC will be asked to describe the antecedent given by the clinician, and then she will choose and describe the corresponding consequence. 咁而家咧，等姑娘嚟考下 CC 嘞喎，你睇下呢度發生咩事啊？媽媽個手袋俾人偷咗。係喎，咁點算啊？你睇下。去警署報警。哦，係喎，媽媽要去警署報警喎。After decoding the picture, the clinician will give verbal cue to elicit CC's production to combine the sentence using the conjunctions. CC will have to describe the causal relationship with the aid of visual map. The clinician will then provide feedback accordingly after each attempt. 咁你可唔可以試下用因為所以嚟解釋點解媽媽要去警署報警啊？因為媽媽個手袋俾人偷咗。好俾心機喎 ，CC， 你有用到因為去講個原因喎，陣間你唔記得咗咧，用埋所以去解釋個結果喎。If CC's attempt at the objective level is unsuccessful, visual cue of pointing will be given as an decreasing. 因為媽媽個手袋俾人偷咗，佢要去警署報警。我好似咧都係唔記得咗用個所以嚟講個結果喎。If CC still fails to use conjunctions in her production, the clinician will provide visual cue of pointing and syllabic cues to remind her the use of conjunctions.
Overall, CC relied the most on verbal and visual cues, and the session goal was met. Here is the home practice for this session.
So now I will move on to talk about session 4. From the last phase of session goal 1, CC was able to produce causal sentences with pectoral antecedents spontaneously. A modification with increased complexity is needed to remove the consequence choosing part and ask her to define a valid reason for a given result instead. This promotes generalization of the use of syntactic structure.
Let's look at the treatment procedure of Session 4. A review on the visual map and the meaning of conjunctions will be conducted. Picture cards of the results will be presented by placing them on the visual map. 我哋咧呢度有一個代表咗個結果嘅圖片喎，咁 CC 咧就要諗下有咩合理嘅原因啦，然後咧再用因為所以嚟解釋翻俾姑娘聽喎。咁而咧等姑娘嚟示範下先。The clinician will demonstrate how to think of a reason for the given result and use the causal conjunctions of 因為所以 to form sentences. In this session, CC has to think of a valid reason by herself according to the given result. Choice prompts, semantic cues, and verbal cues will be given if she fails to think of any. 到你試下啦喎，你睇下呢度發生咩事？弟弟留咗喺屋企。哦，係喎，弟弟留喺屋企點解嘅？因為出邊落大雨。哦，可能係因為出邊落大雨啦。咁你而家咧可唔可以試下用因為所以嚟解釋點解弟弟留咗喺屋企啊？因為出邊落大雨，弟弟留咗喺屋企。Feedback will be provided after each attempt. Additional promptings will be given according to the queuing hierarchy if the attempt is unsuccessful. 嘗試喎，不過咧啱啱好似就唔記得咗用個所以嚟解釋個結果喎。不如你試下用多次因為所以嚟解釋點解弟弟留喺屋企啊？因為出邊落大雨， 所以弟弟留咗屋企。
Overall, CC relied the most on verbal and visual cues. The session goal was met, and here's the home practice given to CC. After a few sessions, CC was able to describe the causal relationship spontaneously 75% of the time with self-generated antecedent. A successful generalization is necessary for an intervention to have benefits in everyday life beyond the original learning environment from research, and increased complexity to the session goal is again needed, in which CC will be asked to use causal conjunctions to describe her personal experience regarding certain topics from session 7. Differences in the procedures will be mainly about the task difficulty. The client will not be given a scenario, but will need to brainstorm a cause-effect relationship related to personal experience in a given topic. Example of treatment target will be 因為冇做功課，所以俾媽媽鬧. Overall, CC relied the most on verbal and visual cues, and the session goal was met. And here's the home practice we will give out after session 7.
For the intervention outcome analysis, it is observed that the scaffolding level of the most effective cue decreased across the sessions with the same task difficulty, suggesting a decrease in CC's needs of support. Moreover, only session 2 and 8 failed to meet the session goal, while a high percentage of accuracy was noted in other sessions. This showed CC's overall improvements across sessions, despite the increased difficulty of task. Here are the probe data presented. It is shown that there are significant improvements for both treatment data and generalization data, while control data stays relatively stable, showing positive treatment effect. In conclusion, the STG was met.
Lastly, here are the future recommendations. Thank you.